So, Jim, go ahead and introduce.
Hey everybody, this is Jim West and Dale Ross on the Jim and Dale Show. This seems like just about every Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock. We were going to talk about the North Carolina high school football scene and talk about a little of this, a little bit of that. Dale, last week of the regular season, does it seem like it's gone by pretty fast for you? To me, it's just flown by.
Actually, it seems like it has. It's gone by extremely fast. And while we had issues with teams having to uh, not cancel games, but reschedule games, and a lot of teams ended up playing 3 games in a week. Um, but we got through, or it looks like we're going to get through the regular season, which with maybe less damage than what I thought we might have with COVID and the games. So that's good, and we'll see. We got 6 more. We got 7 more weeks counting this Friday.
Exactly right. That's going to be the fun part about it. Used to be we had 11 games, up to 11 games, and 12 weeks to play those 11 games. Back when we had the endowment. Now we don't have the endowment anymore. We have a maximum of 10 games, but we have 6 weeks of playoffs, but we don't have subdividing. So there's a lot of different dynamics this year.
Exactly, and that's going to be interesting to see how the playoffs go this year with not having the subdivided. How all the teams are going to qualify is going to be very interesting to see final brackets on Saturday. We
Right.
had a we had a discussion earlier today, and I don't think it's going to be any different than years past, where there's going to be some a little bit of, I won't say controversy, but there's going to be probably this year more hurt feelings about why I didn't make the playoffs than uh, any time in recent history. Let's say since we went to having subdivideds.
Right. Unless you're 1A, I think there's 34 teams in the 1A West and 31 teams in the 1A East. So I think all but two teams are going to make the 1A playoffs. So,
Right, right.
which is kind of scary or kind of sad about that. But the 2A, 3A, and 4A, I do think there are going to be a lot of hurt feelings. And what I'm kind of interested about is whether we're going to see some 6 and 4 teams not make the playoffs, but you might get a 4 and 6 or 5 and 5 team to make the playoffs. I think that is a real definite risk. How about you?
I think so, especially with the subdivideds. Um, that but we've had kind of had that risk in the past too
Right.
of 5 win teams, five to typically it's been the bubble's been a 5 win team. Um,
Right.
you had to have 4 to qualify, and only a few times did we see some 3 win teams slip in because they were in a subdivided. So I don't think that's going to be that kind of impact is going to be much different. Other than now, we're possibly going to see teams with winning records not make it. So
Right.
that's definitely going to cause some, I think, upsetness about what has been put in place.
Now, what's your feeling about getting rid of the endowment game versus having 6 weeks of playoffs? If you had to choose between the two, what do you prefer at this point?
Well, it's not the way I wanted 6 weeks of playoffs.
Yeah, same here.
I wanted to get rid of the endowment game and have 6 weeks, but I wanted subdivided and then let the subdivided champions play.
Right.
Um, in that way, you kind of potentially give you satisfy both of the needs of having a single champion and then, of course, having big and little champions because of that potential disparity.
I
The
totally agree.
endowment games, I've never seen a number, Jim, as to how much the endowment. Certainly, they've helped the NCHSAA grow money, but I don't know what the impact of losing it is right now. I didn't like to be honest with you, I don't like the length of the season. I didn't like having an 11-week, um, 11 game season. I don't like that. I think that's too long of a season. I still think potentially our season is too long. Football goes from August till December.
Right. I mean, August 20th would be the begin dates for this season, and then it goes through what like December 12th. I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
Hmm.
just that's 17 weeks, and that's what it was beforehand. It used to be 12
Yeah,
weeks in the regular season to play 11 games, and then 5 weeks of playoffs. Now it's 11 games or 11 weeks in the regular season versus 6 playoffs, and that's a long time. It's you're talking about
yeah,
1/3 of the year.
exactly. So I would love to have seen that cut down by a week. And that was my proposal in the past was to eliminate, only play 10 regular season games. Um, and then as the playoffs, keep the playoffs either like they were or subdivide, but subdivide with fewer so that we could still get out of there in 5 weeks and then have the final week just be the subdivided champions play each other.
Right.
So fewer teams are playing longer into the season. There's obviously a negative to that because the football generates so much of a school's income to fund other sports, and any additional weeks they have adds to that kitty. But that's a lot on a body, and it's I don't know if it distracts from other sports, but I do worry about that some that other sports don't get the attention that they should get. And does that pull any distraction away from it? I don't know, but I just think it's too long.
A lot of the states they'll have no more than 14 weeks or 15 weeks from the first regular season game until the end of the playoffs. When North Carolina, I think North Carolina's got the longest one, that's 17 weeks. I think South Carolina, I think at one time was up to 17. I don't know if there's 16 weeks now. I think there's 16 weeks, if I remember correctly on that. Maybe South Carolina has the right way on that. The South Carolina, I think, has 11 weeks in the regular season, 10 games, and then 5 weeks of playoffs. I believe that's the case. So they're right at probably 16 weeks. I, you know, even then, I think it's a little bit long there. I'm kind of with you on that, Dale. Of 10 weeks of the regular season play, 5 weeks of playoffs sound good to me. Have no bye week. I think a lot of coaches don't like bye weeks anyway.
That one's a tough one. I think most would prefer not to have them until they have an injury, and
Right.
then they like to have it to get some players healed. So there's kind of a trade off. If you don't need the bye week for that reason, then you probably wanted to keep playing so that you can
Right.
keep all your momentum going and you don't get that. Certainly, your practices kind of stay in sync, but truthful, the week's not the same when you have that. So I think you'll find coaches are probably this or that on that. Let me play, but then I probably need to heal some players because you're going to get players hurt.
Right.
So that's it. Yeah, everybody else, every other college and pros have bye weeks. We probably should too. And if people really looked at it closely, they would say, well, you should cut the season to 9 regular season and have 2 bye weeks.
Now, Dale,
Bodies
just out of
bodies may
curiosity,
need rest.
what do you think is the
Mhm.
biggest? What do you think is the bigger risk? Having your bye week the last week of the regular season. Let's say tomorrow is your or Friday is your bye week. What do you think is worse? To have that bye week at the very end of the season and risk not being sharp for the playoffs because you're not in that game mode week after week, or having the risk of having injured players that could use that bye week to get better. Which I mean, which one's better? Which one's worse to you? Of those two scenarios,
In my mind, I think you want to keep playing.
right?
Um, Great teams probably can handle that bye week.
Deep teams,
Uh, yeah, deep teams can handle that bye week, and uh, they're probably going to have a light first game anyway. So, uh, but I think as a team and a squad, once you get rolling, you want to keep rolling. You want to keep your whole rhythm of everything you're doing. From Monday morning to Friday night. You want the kids doing the same thing and thinking the same. That whole sequence of things, and having a last game bye would be, I don't think, is helpful. But
right?
hey, good teams can usually go through that and be okay. Um, what do you think?
I totally agree with you. I think having a bye week at the very end of the season can be a major issue because you lose your focus a little bit. Kids like having that routine, week after week after week. You practice hard, you have a game, you get to have that Saturday to kind of recuperate your body that Sunday. You go back into practice, and it's kind of a circadian rhythms like with sleep. If you feel a lot better if you get 8 hours of sleep every day instead of doing 10 hours here, 5 hours here, 9 hours here. You want to
Hmm.
keep on continuing those habits of day in and day out, week out doing the same thing. And I do think it might distract them a little bit having that bye week at the last week or even last 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
Well, this is one of the reasons coaches do not like having no school Fridays. That messes up a rhythm.
Right.
Uh, Having a game moved to a Monday or even to a Saturday, that changes everything. And you usually see different outcomes in games that have those impacts of either a no school Friday, moving a game to a Thursday, do I understand that some teams move games to tonight? I heard that yesterday. I didn't check into it, but I think some schools playing tonight because of the potential rain impact this week. Um, in any of those kind of movements, when you get out of that normal Monday to Friday routine, the games end up being differently than what you would have thought they would. And I think most coaches will tell you they are different because the kids are just they get out of that normal sync.
Right.
So
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think I remember it was the association or where I saw it, but I think I did see some projections, or at least the RPI ratings for the football team, and I can't remember exactly where to find it on the association's website. I was going to try to throw that on there so we can kind of look at it together if you were up to it.
yeah, if you can find, as I was mentioning to you when we were on Talking Preps last night, there was an RPI list brought up, and of course that's a major point of seeding. And what teams need to worry about. You should never worry about the RPI. What you should have worried about is winning the conference, because you win your conference, you're okay.
Right.
You finish first in your conference, you're set to go, and it doesn't matter what your RPI is as far as getting into the playoffs are concerned. Um, I think there's some real distinct situations that's going to occur in seeding. You're going to see teams potentially like Chambers. Huff has the inside track to winning the IMAC, what we knew as the IMAC. Um, so that's going to put a team like Chambers is a traveling team. They got a decently tough game this Friday night against Mallard Creek, a longtime rival, and who knows what could happen there. And you could have a Chambers maybe playing on the road the entire. Well, actually, if they go on the road, they probably could end up being on the road the entire playoffs. Really different seeding this year than what we've seen in years past. And who knows? I don't know the full impact of how these things happen. Are we getting any comments by chance?
I have not seen any comments. We got some people watching us though. We had
I
5 or
see
6 at
that.
one time.
I just heard a noise. I wasn't sure what that was. So, okay. So I think just posted. Yeah, there's the RPI ranking.
There we go.
Is that a?
I got it. I got it shared right now.
Okay, so I put it up just in case any of the others watching would like to see it. I'm gonna bring that on,
All right.
Jim, and I'm gonna push us off to the side.
There you go.
I think. Let's see. There we go.
Or just get rid of us.
Is that? Yeah, I want to go back to what I just had there because this one's the yeah.
Let's see if I can. What's the word for it? Make it larger.
Is your?
Let's see here.
Yeah, you can a little bit. There you go.
Okay, here we go. That's a little bit easier to see. I've got the 1A East, and I'm gonna tell you right now, Dale. Can anybody beat Tarboro? And if so, who would come out of the 1A East? Northmore. Look at Northmore.
Well, exactly. I like Tarboro. Have pretty much all season.
But they have lost a game.
You know,
they lost somebody recently too. They lost. Who was it? They lost to. I'm gonna pull up the schedule here. If all of a sudden we get some noise, they lost to. They lost to Rocky Mount at the beginning of the season. They beat Riverside Morton 42-8. But I'm gonna tell you right now, I think Tarboro is the team to beat. I think they're the team to beat in the 1A. And but look at the Northmore. Southside is in the same conference with Tarboro. So is Northside.
Yeah. So hold on right there. So you can see that what the formula is there is your win percentage, your opponent's win percentage, and your opponent's win percentage creates the RPI.
Actually, I'm gonna look at. I think that Southside, Northside might not be in the same conference now. Come think of it, I forgot that they had a redistricting. Yeah, the Southside, Northside have been moved down. They used to be in the same conference with Tarboro, but now they're not. Let me go back down to that. But Northside, Southside, Northampton County. I'm gonna tell you right now, Tarboro plays Northampton County. Tarboro's probably gonna win by 4 or 5 touchdowns, and they're ranked 5th in this. But you go down here, Dale. There's supposed to be 32 teams that can make the playoffs. Only 31 teams.
Right.
Columbia's only played 2 games, so they're not even going to be in the playoffs. So you can kick Columbia out. You're going to have 30 teams. Lejeune is 0-9, and let's look at Lejeune's record. 0-9, and see if they've even they scored many points this year. And they've lost 24-0, 50-0. 2-0, which is probably a forfeit. 55-0, 40.
Yeah.
They did score 6
maybe
points.
Maybe they played a great defensive game that night and got a safety.
So they've scored exactly 6 points in their 9 games.
And what did they give up? I bet they gave up somewhere near close to 300, didn't they? 270 to 300 is my guess.
It was crazy. It's a lot of points. 387 points.
387. So that's all. That is just wow.
That's over 40 points a game. So
yeah.
And then you have that 2-0 game that's kind of throwing things off anyway. So make it 385 out of 8 games. I mean, you're talking close to 50 points a game. Then you got Beargrass, who They've won one game. All these teams are going to make the playoffs. Your Chatham Central is actually a little bit. They have actually a decent offense, or they have in the past had some decent offense. But I mean, all these teams right here
Yeah, it
are
takes a
just
while to get
struggling.
up to a winning percentage team. Keep
I mean,
going.
you're going, keep on going. Kent Pride,
Yeah.
4-3. Washington County, which is Old Plymouth, they've won only 2 games this year, and they're 11th in the RPI.
So
One
you can
A,
see, yeah,
it's
you got to
tough.
get up to the into the top 10 to get into winning uh, seasons. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
So I think Tarboro is the team to beat. Now I'm going to change this over to the 1A West, and Dale, the 1A West is the wild, wild West. A lot of different teams can actually come out of this one. My pick is Eastern Randolph, and they're actually number one on this. Uh,
Mhm.
if I had to pick the number two one, I've, Mitchell comes up, Mountain Island Charter. I don't know. Murphy's been
Mountain Island
inconsistent this year.
Charter has been playing rather well this year. So
Right.
I don't know. Once you start getting into hitting uh, at least that top handful of teams, that's some pretty stiff competition. Where's Thomas?
Eastern,
Thomas Jefferson down at seventh. Okay.
right. And you got
And then,
Thomasville, and Thomasville is
yeah,
back down to 1A again. They're having a good season this year.
they are.
Robbinsville's been, the 1A state championship several times over the last 10 years.
Oh yeah.
Swain County is 4-4, and if Swain County plays in that hard Smoky Mountain Conference. I mean, Andrews this year is a lot better. Andrews usually struggles because they're playing the big, they're playing Robbinsville, Murphy, Swain County. Those are almost every time three losses. Cherokee's playing good in that conference.
Yeah, but
Uh,
what you see what happens there once you get down.
yeah, after about 15, you're really
Yeah,
East Wilkes decent. Drawn has actually had a decent season, but then it really struggles. But there's some like Mountain Heritage. They played Mitchell earlier on this season, and Mitchell handled them pretty well. Mitchell lost to, I believe, the Andrews at the very beginning of the season. Yeah, it was Andrews. They lost to Andrews, and pretty convincingly too. But it was at the very beginning of the season, and there were some players that were outs. This is that's the one thing though. You get 3 or 4 players are outs during the playoffs. This whole landscape pretty much changes. But looking at all this, I think Eastern Randolph is the best team in this side. But I think there's a lot of teams that can compete with Eastern Randolph, unlike Tarboro. Tarboro
right.
on the
That
on the 1A East is definitely going to be Tarboro.
you can I think pencil Tarboro in, and then I don't know. I mean, it's I there may be somebody like a Mountain Island Charter can be a black horse maybe here,
Right.
or a dark horse rather. The I don't know. That's going to be interesting. I would lean. I don't know if I'd lean Eastern Randolph or Mount Airy. Um, but 1A is interesting in a couple aspects of how many teams there are in 1A total, East and West combined, and how many will not make it, or how many will make it as a result of that.
Now, here's Eastern Randolph. They beat Eastern Alamance. That's a 3A team. Beat them convincingly, 34-6. Beat Aspera convincingly, 49-7. Williams is a pretty good 3A team. They beat them 8-6. So those first three teams, all 3As. They play
Hmm.
a 2A West Stanley team, which is average. They beat them 33-3. Southwestern Randolph is now a conference team. They used to be 3A, now they're 2A. And remember, Eastern Alabama or Eastern Randolph is the only 1A team in their conference that plays football. The other schools are all 2As. 32-14 against Southwestern. Trinity 43-7. Providence Grove 38-16. Wheatmore 60-0. The number of teams that they play that are 1A on their schedule is 0. And let me get this off here. Sorry about that, Dale. My
No.
thing comes up here. But the thing is, they played exactly 0 teams that are on their schedule that are 1A. They
Hmm.
played 3 games that are 2A. They're going to end up having 6 games that are 2A. Or it's going to be 3 games that are 3A and 6 games are going to be 2A. Now look at Mount Airy, and I'm going to try to mute this thing if I can, if it comes up. Schedule.
Yeah,
They got like
Max Preps loves to play those videos in their autoplay, and
they're awful.
I get
North
tired
Surrey
of.
beat them, beat them big time. Look at that. The big scores 43-0, 56-6, 62-0. Ashe County's a 3A school. Beat them 55-0. South Stakes 48-6. There's a lot of they played a lot of defense on there. I mean, I'll look at the offense. Obviously, they're great, but look at that: 6 points, 12 points, 18 points. They've allowed 18 points the whole season, giving up 450. But they said North Surrey's 2A, Drawn's 1A, Surrey Central's 2A, Ashe County is 3A. Let's see here. South Stokes 1A, Starmount 1A. Rest of the schools 1A. Schedule wise, Mount Airy's played the better schedule, but I mean, is there one game that I guess East Wilkes wasn't a running score, but the rest of them are all running score.
Yeah,
Yeah. So the closest game they had was a 39-point victory.
yeah. Go back to the RPI thing, and I just wanted to look at the first two. So when you look at the win percentage of both of them's opponents, and actually, that looks like the first five, all of them's opponents average out to being winning records.
Right.
And opponents. So that's what drives that their ranking up is those first two. Their opponents and their opponents are both over 500.
Right. And Eastern Randolph, looking at their records here or their point spread, yeah, they haven't scored as many points as Mount Airy. They scored 297 points. They allowed 59. Just different quality of opponents, if you ask me. Just because the Eastern Randolph played they played 3A teams and a bunch of 2A teams, no 1A teams on their schedule. And Mount Airy is obviously in a 1A conference, so.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to see, but Max Preps did not do a good job with it, and that is a true power ranking. Max Preps power ranking was not very good. Let's jump to 2A.
Okay. I
We're
was going to
30.
look at Andrews and Lake Norman's, the two teams that Lake Mitchell lost to. All right, let's go to 2A East. And I mean, look at Princeton. They were a 1A team, and they're the very top of the heap on the 2As. Northeastern's always up there. East Duplin's always up there.
Mhm.
Wallace Rose Hill. St. Paul's went to the state championship game last year.
Yeah.
Whiteville. I mean, all these teams right here are just incredible. Roanoke Rapids, that's a very good program. They're fast too. Washington, I mean, they went to a regional final last year and lost to St.
Yeah, I was
Paul's.
going to say Washington, and
You got to give Garrett Futchland over here, James Keenan. Give a shout out to Garrett here. They beat some pretty good teams. They beat Southwest Onslow. They beat Kinston. Cummings, they're up and coming this year. I mean, this is a lot deeper. This is a big difference between 1A and 2A. Looking at it though, I'd say that any of these teams in probably the top 15, I think are legitimate.
look at Harford County.
I think any of
Wow.
these. Holmes was 1A, now they're 2A, but all these teams right here, there's some big names in there. West Craven for a long time was 3A, now they're 2A.
Right.
All these teams up here, any one of them could represent the 2A East. If I had to put money on it though, Northeastern's looking awfully good, and so is East Duplin. And And look at this though. Look at Walls Rose Hills. Their opponents' winning percentage close to
I see that.
62%.
Yeah, because
They're
I was
battle
just sitting
tested.
there thinking Wallace Rose Hill might, that they could be well, with that kind of RPI, it's hard to say dark horse, but yeah.
I think East Duplin beat Walls Rose Hill last week. I'm gonna double check that. Yes, they beat them 24-21. So East Duplin is battle tested. So is Walls Rose Hill. Walls Rose Hill is going to play James Keenan this Friday. That's going to be a good game. The only other loss they lost to was North Myrtle Beach, which is I think North Myrtle Beach is basically what we call a 4A program. I'm
Thank you,
gonna go
Max
ahead and
Prep.
get exactly.
I want that car. Thank you, Max Preps.
So all these teams here just really good, and you got 48 teams and only 32 buys, and so you're looking at going up here.
Yeah, so get right there around 32. Let's see what we're going to get potentially. And there's other factors as to where you finish in conference, etc.
Right.
But
There's some
there are some 2-win teams.
right. Fairmont's two wins that could be in now, and it's all they got one more week of season to play. So these teams,
Yeah.
some of these teams are going to drop down, some are going to go up. So let's go look at the 2A West. And I'm going to go back down to the same level here.
Yeah.
You see North Stanley's at 31. They beat Mount Pleasant last week. And Mount Pleasant is ranked 27th. The reason why Mount Pleasant's they won 6 games and North Stanley's 4. But
That's
look at the winning
that's
percentage.
Jim's high school, by the way, people.
That's right. That's right. No, no bias. But North Stanley will have a win next week or this Friday. They're playing Albemarle, and they should beat Albemarle pretty easily. But Newton Conover, Randleman beat North Stanley beginning of the season, and Randleman right now is they're on the outside looking in. They're going to have to play Eastern Randolph. If they beat Eastern Randolph, they should be in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to beat Eastern. I think
No.
Eastern will handle them pretty well. But going up to the very top, these are some big names here. Shelby and Raceville. You don't get any bigger than that in 2A.
You don't get too much bigger than that. No, you don't. Henderson was not looking bad.
East Surrey. I mean, they went to 3 straight 1A or 1AA state championships. Now they're 2A.
And Shelby and Burns play this week.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's
Burns is definitely can.
Burns is
They can.
You can't shut your eyes on them. Nor can you look at number 3 there.
In this right here, I know in the 2A East, I said there was probably 15 teams that could can go to all the way win their region. I'm gonna say in the West it's down to 6 teams. I don't see Bunker Hill, Providence Grove, Chase, maybe Monroe or Salisbury. Monroe and
I was
Salisbury.
going to say Salisbury maybe.
Salisbury can get in there. So 7, 8 teams.
West Lincoln's looking good, but I don't know. They may make a deep run.
They might go to the 3rd or 4th round. No doubt about it. But I'm gonna say there's probably 8 teams. But I think there's some big players here. Shelby and Reesville. I'm gonna say it's probably a 75% chance that one of those top 2 teams will be the 2A West representative.
75% chance.
I'm gonna say it's probably a 3 out of 4 chance that's gonna be one of those top 2 teams.
Man, I will answer that question after I see Shelby and Burns play.
I gotcha.
I don't know if I still would like to see a good power ranking, but the Maidens and the Salisburys,
Salisbury is good.
Yeah,
Salisbury is. Reesville though they've played 3A team, a 4A team. Rockingham County's a 3A team. North Forsyth's now 2A. Walkertown is I think it's 2A. Andrews 2A. But look at these schedules here. I mean, they haven't really had a close game at all. I mean, they beat Page 42-13, and Page is I forgot what their record is. I'm gonna just look real quick. They're 4-5, which is not bad for a 4A team. If you can beat a 4A team like Page by
Yeah,
29 points,
if you're a 2A team, exactly. That's
you're doing
that's a
pretty good.
decent win there. That's a quality win.
I'm just big on these top two
No,
programs here.
there's without doubt, there's tradition and they're good teams, and there's a lot of tradition there.
Right.
So, how many
So let's
times have I driven up to the Triangle area for championship games and had or either passed or had passed me flags waving with lions on them? A lot of times.
Oh yeah, a lot of times. So we're gonna go to the 3A East, Eastern Randolph, which is right down in my back alley. They're ranked number one, and if you remember, Dale, the top team from the 1A West was Eastern Randolph, who beat Eastern Alamance.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
And that's something else. Northern Nash,
How about
71st.
71st there? Yeah.
71st used to be a 4A team. Now they're 3A. Southern Nash,
Hmm.
they play that double wing. Jacksonville. I mean, these are some big teams here. Hunt's had a really good season this year. And Lee County, a lot of people are saying Lee County's down. Well, you know what? When you play Richmond County, you play Scotland, you play
Yeah.
Pinecrest, you're not going to win all your games. It's just a known fact. Those teams, they're hard to win here. Lee County, they're used to going, going breezing through their conference schedule and not only not having any losses, but also not having any games that didn't go into that all the games went into a running clock. They did beat Scotland. They lost to Richmond. They lost to Pinecrest. There's no shame in a 3A team losing those two 4A
No,
schools.
those three schools. Yeah. No, not at
Exactly.
all.
They lost to Glenn, and oh, I hate this thing. Oh, thank you, Amazon. We want to hear that. Havelock, I saw Havelock play against Southern Durham. Havelock's the real deal. They're young. I mean, they only have like 5 seniors on their program, but they are fast and they're big. Rocky Mount, look at that. Rocky Mount 5-4,
You
ranked number
know,
9.
just sitting here thinking, I see Rose there at 11, and I saw Rose play a number of state championships at 4A.
Right. Well, here's the one that everybody should really be circling is Smithfield Selma. Dale, I'm sure you remember about 3 years in a row they didn't even win a game. They were 0-11 for like 3 years in
Hmm.
a row. They haven't had a winning season. I can't tell you how long. They're going to have one this year. They'll at least go 6-5. They'll probably win more than just 6 games. Looking at it though, I've seen Southern Durham play a couple times. Southern Durham is a real young team. They played Havelock and was ahead of Havelock 2-0 at halftime, and then they just don't have the depth to keep up with a lot of those teams. And they will. There's a tremendously well coached team. They just don't have the depth right now. I don't see them being a team that's going to win through the East. But I will tell you right now, they can beat some of these teams up here and spoil somebody's plans. They can go make a third or fourth round dive in the playoffs.
And
Rose
certainly
just
RPI doesn't tell us everything, but I'm sitting there thinking, what about Hunt? Down at
number 6 here.
yeah,
So
you
yeah,
can't. You can only control a little bit how good your opponents are, but you see the opponents, um, and the opponents looked pretty decent. Yeah, so 40, how many teams are there? 40?
there's 50 teams in the
50.
3A East, and the 32-33 right now. South Central 1-6, First Flight at 3-5. First Flight used to be a 2A. South Central used to be 4A. Swansboro's right there. East Wake's right there. All this right here is a big old jumbled mess right now. I'm gonna say if you're in the bottom four, the from 29 to 32, you cannot rest on your laurels. If you're on the top four or the from 33 to 36, you got some. You
unless
got
you're
some.
unless you're in a split conference and it's a 3A 4A split, and
Right.
you happen to have won the 3A part of it.
Exactly
But
right.
then there's I don't think you get seated as a number one unless you finish in the top
3 in your conference.
three. Yeah.
So we're going to go to 3A West and look at here, Kings Mountain. Dale, it seems like every year Kings Mountain is right up there in the talk. And I cannot remember if they've ever been to a state championship game
You
since they've been
know,
a member of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association.
I'm a huge fan of the Mountaineers, and it just seems like third, fourth round is their nemesis, and they can typically, well, I don't say typically, but a lot of times they make it there, but they haven't been able to get through it. And they've got a great team this year. But when you look at the West, who can step up, and they got to play Crest this Friday night, by the way.
Right. That's
Yeah,
I mean they're number 7 on here.
that's a big rival game too, and
Right.
that may tell us. Well, again, it doesn't tell because a Crest can still step up in the playoffs, as an example. Uh, Statesville again. They've played well this year.
Right. Pisgah and Lefford last year, both of those were 2A teams. Now they're 3A.
Mm-hmm.
Smoky Mountain was a 2A team last year. They're now 3A. South Point was a 2A team, now 3A.
Yeah, so South Point could be a bit of a surprise or two, maybe. They've
And
got some
Concord is
potential.
Concord's finally got turned around.
In that's one of the biggest surprises to me. They play Kannapolis this Friday night too.
Yep. Good chance they'll beat them too.
Yeah, I'm gonna say they they may get the bail this Friday night, but when you look at what Concord has done over the last handful of years, that's a huge turnaround. And of course, we all remember what 15 years ago they were contending and winning state championships back in the 2000s. So it's not uncommon territory for them, but it certainly is for the last decade. And look there at West Charlotte. So you want a team that's kind of doing, their schedule is 4A. They have West Mecklenburg, and that's it, and everybody else is 4A, and we're not just talking week 4A teams that they're playing. And look at last week's game.
Yeah, I mean they played Chambers and did pretty good against them.
Yeah,
they did good against Huff too. I mean losing 20 points to Huff is nothing to be ashamed of.
Right, especially when you're when you look at where they were as a program. And the number of players they've got to work with, their roster is 2A size roster.
Right.
It's many of these 3A teams here have larger rosters, and certainly the 4A teams that they've played. So I'm just mentioning that because while their RPI has them, kind of low, that's a team that can
surprise them.
Yeah, I don't know if and Sam, I know, is not watching this, so it doesn't matter. But I don't know if they can contend with a Kings Mountain, but they may be able to. So they could cause some of those teams in that top 4 some heartache. So don't count them out of 3A. That's a dark horse. That's a real dark horse right there.
Oh, I agree. I was looking at Kings Mountain, Pisco, Ledford, Statesville's had a really good team this year. For Athletic Dudley,
Yeah.
I mean, I always like watching Dudley. Dale, have you ever been to a Dudley high school football
I
game?
have.
The home
I have. Yeah.
best to me, it's got the best tradition, best just about the best everything. The overall experience for watching a high school football game, it's
Hmm.
hard to beat the Tarp. The Tarp is the one of the best stadiums around. Great music and great food, but even better, great coaching and great football. I mean, Dudley's done pretty good this year. They lost to Hillside. But everything else, I mean, look at that. Just these are running scores right here. Last 5 games, the closest game was a 59-6. That's a
And
55-0.
that's another thing that, we were talking about. Would you like to have a bye the last week of the season? And another thing you would like to have is at least a game that pushes you um, there towards the end of the season to keep you in tune, because uh, you want to get, when you get up on score, most coaches want to be able to give players opportunities to play, but you also want them to know what it feels like to keep playing in the third and fourth quarter. Because when you hit the playoffs, you're going to start getting tested and pushed into the third and fourth, and you don't want the players to lose that sense of self there. All
Right.
right. So what are we hitting now?
We're going to do the 4A East and Wake Forest, Richmond.
So
I mean,
look at that. Yeah, Wake Forest sitting there with the best RPI, but Richmond, New Bern again. There's a lot of good teams there, but when I look at this, and I like Pinecrest, but you gotta think, and I don't know how good that New Bern team is. That's a question mark. But I circle Richmond as well. Exactly. That's
that's
what I
me.
was going to say. That's the team that I have to say has the biggest shot of coming out of the East.
I
Sorry, Wake
agree.
Forest, but I think we're talking about different levels of football here.
New Bern, they beat North Pitt, which is a 2A school. Broughton, 4A. West Craven's a 2A school. Norfolk, that was a close game, 29-27. I don't know what size Maury is in Virginia. Havelock, that's when Havelock, a bunch of kids or several kids were coming out of COVID protocol for Havelock, so that Havelock was down that game. Jacksonville, they lost to Jacksonville 29-28. That's one reason why Jacksonville can't be ignored in 3A. So New Bern that's a good team. I mean, it's a really good team, and one of the biggest unknowns is if anybody's going to get sick with this, from COVID.
Oh yeah. So you don't want it, but we circle Richmond, but Richmond could have an issue next Monday with COVID and then not be able to play the first game of the playoffs, and they're out. So
Right.
that's one of the unknowns, and certainly we don't want anything like that to happen. But that could happen to any team. Pinecrest is for whatever reason, I've liked Pinecrest this year. Um,
They lost to Grimsley, which is no shame in that. Grimsley's a very good caliber 4A team. They went to the state championship last year and they lost to Richmond by a touchdown. Yeah, I don't think you can sleep on Pinecrest at all.
yeah.
I mean, they beat Scotland. They beat Lee County. Hoke County is a good team. A lot of people
Oh,
they
by the
don't
way,
talk about Hoke, but they're good.
yeah. So Richmond, Scotland play this week. There's a big rival week
Right.
in football.
I've seen Southern Alamance play, and I'm gonna tell you right now, they are fast. They're usually known as being a big team, but they're fast in a lot of ways. They kind of remind me of Charlotte Catholic. They're very well fundamentally sound.
Mhm.
Don't get me wrong; they're going to make some mistakes. They're going to go illegal procedures and false starts and stuff like that, just like any 16, 17-year-old kid will do. But they're a good team. I've seen Leesville Road play. They played Southern Durham, but I'm gonna tell you right now, if to me it's gonna be in the top four teams. Cleveland, nobody really talks about Cleveland. They were a 3A team last year. Now they're 4A, and they have some athletes on that team, and they played defense. They allowed Rose 14 points, South Gardner 18 points, and Gardner 21 points. But overall, I mean, there's a lot of 55-0, 49-6. Southeast Roundoff, or Southeast Raleigh is a lot better this year.
Mhm.
Fuquay 49-6. I mean, these teams are not all of them are just slumps or pushovers. They can play some defense on that. So keep an eye out on Cleveland. But if I had to guess on this, though, Richmond is my number one team, and Wake Forest is up there, but I think there's a pretty good gap between. I mean, I think Richmond and New Bern's the top two teams, and then probably I'll throw Heritage, Pinecrest, and maybe Wake Forest in the next tier.
So I'm going to throw my dark horse is, and maybe it's a bias, but it's going to be Pinecrest.
Pinecrest.
Millbrook's an interesting program, but I don't know. I don't want to be down on that triangle area or the Raleigh area, but
Well, Raleigh's the triangle's so incestuous. The thing with Millbrook, who have they played that's really kind of shocks you on there? A Friendship, Inlow, Gardner. I mean, they're not bad teams, but there's no name teams there. Anything that you'd
so
want to
do one
schedule.
thing. So do one thing. Scroll up top and go to stats and look at the quarterback stats.
27 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 29-5 for the whole team, but 27-4 by this sophomore.
Yeah.
You know, he's only going to get better.
His QB rating, I don't for some reason they cut it off on the right now, but I think you can highlight it. But it was like I want to think 124 last time I looked at it. It was up there. The kid is good. This is a kid to be thinking about for the future here in North Carolina.
I like how the big old question has a big old question mark behind the Fortune, Mason Fortune.
Wonder what that's all about.
But let's go back to I'm gonna look at the schedule.
I just wanted you to take a look at that. I don't know that he's going to be able to lead them as a dark horse, but that's a ball player right there.
Right. The team that Rollsville is the team that I think is the biggest game they've played this year, and they actually beat them. Heritage, I'll take it back. Heritage they lost to Heritage 35-17, but Rollsville was probably the best quality win. Wakefield was a pretty good quality win. I wouldn't say quite on the same level as Rollsville, but close. We're going to find out a lot about Millbrook against Wake Forest this week. So
that'll tell the big story. But actually, I think about both of them, but definitely it's more of a measuring stick for Millbrook, I think, than it is Wake Forest.
Oh, I agree. And I'm just going to look at the stats for Wake Forest. They've only passed the ball 923 yards this year, and they have rushed for 1745. That's actually a little bit more passing than I expected. They used to, let's say they've thrown the ball 130 times in 9 games. Usually, it's instead of having about 15 passes a game, it's usually like 8 to 10 or so. They're usually heavy runners on that team. At least they used to play the old wing T.
So there could be some competitive games, but I think this is very, very top heavy.
Jordan is a team I'd keep an eye out on. Jordan has got some size on them, and they are young, but they got a lot of size on them. The thing with Jordan is they lack discipline, and that's something that I always would have to come back to. Chapel Hill, I'm probably going to watch the fourth game. Watching them, they've been fun to watch this year. One of the more fun teams to watch. They have a really great offense, good quarterback. Their defense is a little bit, a little bit bend but don't break. But sometimes they break. Chapel Hill is playing Northern Durham. Chapel Hill should beat Northern Durham. Northern Durham's down this year. They're all the way down to 48 out of 51. That's not where you see Northern Durham a lot most of the times.
Not normally. No.
And I've seen Riverside Durham play. These teams are just young this year. Everywhere in the Durham area is pretty much young except for one, Hillside.
Mm-hmm.
Hillside is ranked number 12. Keep an eye on Hillside. They can definitely win it. Or at least they can go make a pretty good deep run. So let's go to your neck of the woods. Let's do the last one, the 4-8 West. And this is always one of my favorite ones here.
Garrett, we'll address your statement there in just a moment, or we can address it now before you. Well, let's go ahead and do this first. He just said he kind of likes the RPI. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You look at there's a lot. 10. There's a lot of tough teams there. Now, Weddington and Marvin Ridge play this Friday night. I was at that game last year. So that's gonna that'll tell us, I think, a decent amount. We know Weddington's a really good team.
I'm just curious about who Weddington lost to. They lost Ardrey Kell. That's
early,
the one.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, they lost 38-21 to Ardrey.
Yeah.
They had a big win against Catholic, Charlotte Catholic, somewhere during the season, didn't they? No, they didn't play Charlotte Catholic this year.
I'm going to go ahead and say it. While they have a high RPI, they're probably not thought of ranked very highly, but Ardrey Kell's my dark horse. That's a good that's a good team. I don't know that they can beat a Huff, but they're very well disciplined. I love their quarterback. I like their tight end.
How did they do the Olympic game? 13-12. That
well. So this is the wild thing about that conference, in that Olympic, Ardrey Kell, Myers Park, and South Mac. Each game that all those teams have played against each other have been one-score games. So that conference is highly, you could say, is highly competitive on the top four. And Myers Park has to face Olympic this week. When you drop down, now see, you got Charlotte Catholic down there at 21. Now, Charlotte Catholic is playing in that conference with Butler. Butler, Providence, they're in a decently tough. So their losses, one was to a Catholic school out of state, and the other loss is to Butler. I think that's right. I think that was Catholic's other loss was to
Catholic lost to
school.
Butler. Yeah, they lost to
they lost
Trinity.
Yeah, exactly. So they're always a team to look out for. Here they are in 4A, but there's no little 4A, which is they've never played in the big 4A in playoffs. They were in the small 4A. But they went toe to toe with Butler in that game. This is a tough, top heavy. Look at North Mecklenburg there at 5-3.
AC Reynolds 6-3. Page 4-5. Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor. We always think about them as 3A.
Yeah, and how often would we see them this low? I think about them as 3A typical, although I do remember them being 4A at least in the middle 2000s.
Right.
2005 or 4, I think. I can't remember.
No,
Back in
wasn't
that time
Olympic
frame.
wasn't Olympic 3A for a few years. Like
Yeah, so Olympic was 3A from 2002. That alignment that came out in 2001, actually 2001 through 2000. No, excuse me. They were 4A then. They were in 2005 alignment. They went 3A.
look at the
But
AL Brown.
they've been 4A for a long time. And Jim, quite honestly, I haven't seen ADM, but they're one of the largest schools in the state. They might be the largest
Right.
school in the state, but so that's no excuse for them to be that low ranked in an RPI. Their
What's
problem
going
is,
on with?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, what's going on with Independence though?
So Independence has what was a big rival game, and I'm sure still a rival game. They play Butler this Friday night. From a losing season last year, I think they were 2-win season last year. Is that
Sounds
right?
right.
Now, prior to that, they were like 5 to 6 win. They've been that way since. So the last real great season they had was when Evans was coach, and then Harden. They were still had a winning record, and then it's been kind of downhill since then. So, I don't know. A win this week could shove them up into a. Why did I see West Charlotte in there?
So West
Did I?
Cabarrus.
Was it
I
West
think-
Cabarrus that I saw? Okay,
Yeah,
good.
West Cabarrus.
I was going to say that was a mistake. Okay, so that could shove them up, but they will potentially miss playoffs. Talking about Independence, they're a team to possibly watch out for. They may rise back up. Mallard Creek, Davie. And that group that you got shown there, man, I like Catholic having an opportunity to be 3rd to 4th round team.
Oh yeah, can you imagine? They're going to be road. They're going to be road warriors more chances than not. I mean, basically anybody that's if you're not in the top 16 of the seeds, you're going to be on the road for a good portion. South Caldwell 7-1. I was like, how if Charlotte Catholic and South Caldwell played?
I think
Catholic would win by 3 or 4 touchdowns.
They'll smash them, I think. Yeah.
It's
sorry, South Caldwell, but I just think it's a different level of football.
And Olympic, they're at 35, and look at that, they've lost 3 games. I just want to pull that up real quick.
Weddington, Ardrey-Kell, and South Mac. And the only game in that batch that was not a game was the Weddington game, and that was a shutout, blowout.
So they lost by a point, lost to 2 points. So by 3 points, they lost between South Mac and Ardrey-Kell. 3 points was the difference. And right now they lost to Weddington 28-0, which is not embarrassing or anything.
Well, I don't know. 21-0's a blowout in my book. So
I mean, it's not embarrassing.
Well, that's not a 42-0 loss.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's not embarrassing, but it's not a.
It's nothing to hang your hat on either, but
exactly right. A.L. Brown.
Yeah, I mean A.L. Brown's just.
I love Coach Newsom. I would love to see them higher up than that.
Yeah, I agree, and they won their first 3 games, and then they just hit a horrible patch here. They lost to Hickory Ridge, Lake Norman by a point. Cox Mill lost by 13, and West Cabarrus. Those 3 losses right there between Lake Norman, Cox Mill, and West Cabarrus. You got a lot of natives over at in K-Town all upset. Losing to Mooresville 14-6, that upset a bunch of people.
Well, that's because that's a rival. That's kind of a rival game too, right? So.
And if they lose the Battle of the Bell,
well, I hate to say it, but it looks like the odds are that they could.
This will be the first losing season they've had since 1978, I believe. It's been 40 plus years. And if they lose against Concord, it'll be a losing season.
Oh man, man. Concord, sorry, but I'm pulling against you.
Oh, I'm pulling for A.L. Brown also.
Yeah.
I don't need to. I'm not going to spend that net too much now. Let's see here.
Palisades is about to cut Olympic in half. Oh, yeah. I don't know about cutting it in half, Jeff. It's it'll impact for sure, but Olympic, I mean, even cutting it in half is still a huge school, and there'll be some other border shifting, but that's going to be an interesting program. But that's down the road to see what the Palisades will generate, because it's a big area.
So, just looking at this though, if there's a team, if I say there's 3 teams that I think that I would look out the most for, it's going to be Huff and Chambers. Got to be in the mention, and the third one would probably be Weddington. Sorry, Grimsley, I'm but you and Ardrey Kell behind Weddington on that, but seriously though, any of those top 6 teams to me could win it, and I'd not be
Yeah, I
surprised
think,
at all.
like I say, I think Ardrey Kell's my dark horse here.
Right.
I think a Catholic is a potential dark horse as well, and it can, especially from coming way back in the pack as far as the RPI is concerned. As you got to keep in mind, Butler's a good program, and that was a 1-score game, and a legit 1-score game. And that's the thing, is when people can say, well, if they played again, it would be a 1-score game. I guess is my point. It would be, and I wouldn't bet huge sums of money on anyone. So that's
Could
a
you
good.
imagine if it was?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Could you imagine Catholic versus East Forsyth in the first round? That's a game that could happen. I mean, East Forsyth's they won a couple state championships recently. Catholic's won
And
4 in a row.
they've been a big thorn in a few teams' sides as well.
Or how about Reagan and Mallard Creek? I mean, Mallard Creek at 23, Reagan at 10. I'm just doing this basically. If you have 32 teams that are going to make it, you know that you just add take 2 numbers and add them up to 33. So 10 plus 23, they'd be the teams that play.
So your
So
number, right? So your number 14 team too that's a danger team for people.
and they'd play South Caldwell. They'd beat the crap out of South Caldwell.
Oh yeah, no question. So that's just another team to keep in mind. And maybe they could be a gray horse. I don't know what the what to call another dark horse, but they
Tan
have
horse.
the potential to at least make, I think, a 3rd-round run.
Right.
And I don't know. Once we see, that's the whole thing. Is it's hard for me to gauge them and their opponents against the Huff and Chambers opponents right now. But Huff and Chambers have got to be your 2 favorites out of here.
Right.
There's Chambers being the defending champions. Cuthbertson, Providence, North Meck. So these are good programs. Good.
Oh yeah.
They're good. They're not great, but those are good programs.
You don't really get into any really weak teams until Ragsdale, RJ Reynolds. I'm gonna say probably around 41, 42 is about when you start getting into some weak teams in the 4As. But you got 40 pretty decent sized team or 40 decent teams in the 4As at different calibers.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody in the top 40 they're not pushovers. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've seen Cuthbertson play. I saw them flash up there. So yeah, it's I think it's going to be It's going to be interesting because of the way the playoffs are determined this year. It's going to be interesting just to see how the matchups are going to come out. You know, who's going to be playing who first round.
And exactly who has to drive up that mountain
Well,
to play a
that's
team?
true too, but I have a feeling there's potential of there being some pretty tough first round games for some teams. Heavily, you know, and I'm not talking about that middle, you know, um, what we would call what 16, 17, something like that. I'm talking
Right.
about a one, someone in that we could see a 1-6 fall. I think there's that
Yes.
potential.
So let's
Maybe
say
maybe a
six.
1-8, maybe a 1-8 fall.
Well, Watauga, they would play Mooresville if it holds out. Mooresville being Mooresville would have to go up to Watauga. That would be an interesting game, to be honest with you.
Especially if the weather stays cold. That's a cold place. You ever been to Watauga?
Oh, it is. It is cold. It can
Down
if
in
if
the,
it's
you
it
know,
is if it's breezy. Oh my gosh, just forget about it.
it's down in the valley basically.
Right.
That cold, it seems like that cold settles in even more. Um,
You just
it's a
can't get away from it.
that's a nice stadium, but yeah, uh, that'd be a tough game for Mooresville, I think, if they were to hit Watauga first round.
Now, AC Reynolds, over in Fairview, Asheville area, they play Marvin Ridge. That would be a fun game to watch, to be honest with you. I'd love to see
Wow,
those two teams play. It'd be a close one.
that'd be an interesting game. So that's going to be though. That would be down here.
Right.
I would guess. So they would not have to go up to Asheville.
Now, North Mech playing Northern Guilford. That would be a fun game to watch. North Mech is surprising people this year. I mean, they're
Them
not
beating Mallard Creek was a shock. So
right.
that's a little bit of a
Providence, Weddington. I think I take Weddington over Providence.
Providence and Weddington. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would take Weddington over most teams. Uh,
So it's going to be fun. So Dale, we've kind of talked about the playoffs. Let's talk a little bit about this week here. If you're a coach and you're on the bubble right now, what are the things you're going to be stressing to your team about? What are the points that you want to kind of hammer into them at this point?
if you're on the bubble, well,
Yes.
you gotta find a way to motivate the players because you need to impress upon them, excuse me, the importance of the win. And so it's all got to be about motivation. Certainly, you got to stress that to win a game, you got to be disciplined and blah blah blah. But most importantly, they have to feel like they still have an opportunity to make it, and that they can control that destiny. Of course, it's a letdown if they win and they still don't make it, because that's the
If
problem
you
with being
lose.
on the bubble, and you can't tell them now, well, we lost this because of what we've done this season.
Now, let's say that you're a team that's like that maybe is not even going to be close to the bubble, but you're somewhat decent team, maybe 38 to 40 or so like that, and you can play a team that is on the bubble. I would have fun on this one. To me, it's easy to motivate a team. So you know what, these guys right here, they're just buried to uncork these champagne bottles because they know they're going to win, and the only thing I have to do is win, and they're already taking it for granted. We're going to shove them right up their keister on this. To me, it's one of the best ways to motivate a struggling team. So you know what, these guys over here, they're not even taking you serious. We're going to show you how tough you are, how tough we
That's
are to the world.
that certainly can be used as motivation. Maybe the bigger part of that motivation would be how much you feel like, or you again impress upon the players that they don't respect you,
Right.
because you haven't had these wins, and they do, and they're so great. Especially, of course, there becomes a point that it doesn't matter how much, you still have to motivate. Uh,
Right.
there is going to become a gap that you can't motivate a player or a team into winning. But if you've got some potential, and that's one of the problems with those last games of the season, against, I said earlier, you like to be pressed a little bit. Um, you don't want to have walk-in games into the playoffs, because maybe your players take it all wrong, and they do have that attitude, that you were just saying you would impress upon the lesser team, that that's the way they feel. Well, those players may actually have that attitude, take it into the game, and there comes a point you can't turn on the switch, and if the switch isn't on at the blow of the whistle to start the game, that switch ain't going to come on.
Right.
That's most likely is not going to come on. Um, I remember a game against oh gosh, Akins, the quarterback at Harding, who played down at Miami Dolphins. Olympic was up 42-7 or something like that going into halftime. And I remember him telling his teammates, he was yelling at his teammates, "We're going to come back in this thing." And he's motivating his teammates. And what happened, Olympic came out and they pulled I think, if I remember right, it was either after the first series in the third quarter, they pulled their players. Well, guess what happened? They did come back. And then as they started coming back, they put the first team back in after the game got within 2 or 3 scores. But those players their switches were off, and they could not turn their switches back on. And the
Right.
other guys had just ramped their motivation was just so high, it carried them right through. So you can see the same kind of thing happening in your scenario.
Right.
And the greater team has their switch turned off because this is a game we can coast in, and the other team has theirs turned on and they're extra motivated. It's just you can't get so it's important that those coaches have a very, very tough situation of keeping their players motivated to play that game Friday night. We got a
Right.
2-7 team we're playing, and you try to tell them, hey, they're not a horrible team. They still know how to line up and snap, and they got a few ball players. So we still have to go out and take care of business. And it's important that you take care of business and play into the third quarter. I think this time of the year, you need your players playing into the fourth quarter, maybe the first series of the fourth quarter, because they need to know what it's like to come out of the locker room, hit the field, play. So you would kind of like for that 2-17 to push you a little bit, but you'd
Right.
be prepared for the push.
I agree. And, the
Win your
other thing,
conference and you're not on the bubble. That's the
uh,
important thing. So let me see here what did it. No, Olympic won the game, but it was close. Garrett said the RPI is actually, he likes it. Makes a lot of sense. But there's still a couple of other criteria about where you finish in conference, et cetera, that plays in. And none of us understand the system. We'll maybe understand the system after we see how teams make it.
And Dale, I just want to bring this up to. I mean, we haven't had anything brought up since probably the preseason, but I don't think the NCHSAA or um, Q Tucker is finding ways. Like, what? I know those people were. I'm gonna have to get back at some coaches right now. I'm gonna find this is a perfect way. I'm gonna screw up with the formula, and I'm gonna make a team go home. You remember that we had that Republican representative said that there's some coaches that fear Q and feel like she's
Yep.
going to retaliate. Well, she was just making up stuff when she said that because it just doesn't happen like that.
Yeah,
And
there's a formula. It's printed out, and
right,
we could study it and learn it. I just haven't studied it, but there's a formula that says
right.
this is what is required to make the playoffs.
And
So
there's people that'll believe whatever that lady says because she's a
yeah,
representative in the North Carolina legislature. But I
well,
just
she's going to go in and she's going to alter the RPI rating. Well, no,
right,
that's based on all these win losses. She'd have to go in and give a team a loss or two or three. That just can't happen. It's a merit. Even this is a merit-based system, right? So
right, exactly. And it's just I hear this stuff. I just want to bring that back up because NCHSAA gets beat up around this time of season anyway.
yeah,
Because people say that my team didn't make the playoffs, but some other team did. But if your team played a little bit better during the regular season, if you had more than four wins, you wouldn't have to be sweating about it. You wouldn't have to be worried about it for
exactly.
most time. There are some exceptions. I remember a team like I think it was Croatan or Trask, one of those teams out of the East. They won 7 or 8 games and they didn't make the playoffs. I totally get that. That was unfortunate. But those are very seldom, and I don't think it had anything to do with revenge or anything like that. Just how it is.
Just how it is, but it is a good. This weekend could have been, or still could be, a good example of how things are done if they would stream that process and let everybody watch that selection process take place.
Right.
Let them see and I'm sure it's going to be the same way. They'll put everything together. They'll release brackets. There will be an opportunity for teams to contest if they didn't make it or not, as an example. There'll be a reason for them to submit that. So it's important that teams understand what their record is, what their opponent's record is, and what their opponent's records are. So
This
they
is
need
how
to have all that data.
This
Exactly. It's all
this is how a lot of these people are going to be contesting, and they're going to get on Twitter and say, "This is unfair. This is wrong. Get mad with
exactly.
me."
So win another game or two, and your RPI goes up. Um, you could say play tougher opponents and beat them, but your opponent's win-loss record applies. But really, you control your own destiny and all this stuff.
Right.
You win the conference, it's not a question. So win the conference. Don't do anything else. Just go out, win the conference, and you will not be contesting anything. So
Right.
anyway, there'll be contesting, and then there'll be a period that contesting will be, there's no more contesting. I assume they'll only allow one, and then they'll resubmit brackets, and that's what we'll have. And I'd like to see that process take place.
Yeah, I've seen paint dry. I've seen sausage made.
What
I'll,
did
I'll
Forrest?
let the experts do it this time. Like you, Dale, you can watch it. The thing I'm joking about it is kind of interesting, but it's just a lengthy process though. It takes probably 2.5 hours to do all they do. When
Oh gosh.
it's just I mean just during that process of going through the motions that day, it's I just
Well, if
weekends are
if
valuable.
and I don't know the ifs. I still have questions about max preps, but this process to generate a first set of brackets, there should be a requirement that all schools have their scores reported before midnight.
I agree. I totally agree with
Um,
you on that.
and if they have their scores submitted before midnight, then when everybody, the NCHSAA gets up Saturday morning, the brackets can be printed because once it's in there, it's all calculated. There's no subjective information. It's all objective. So the brackets can be printed out and boom, there they are. Then they could be contested at that point. There's no reason this process needs to take that long. So you require them to put the scores in. I don't know if you can, it's probably too late if they haven't already said that, because legally someone could say you can't do that. But hopefully the NCHSAA has told everyone you're required to have your scores in by midnight or by
About 1 a.m. or so. I mean,
well, let's say 15 minutes after game end. Let's put it on a more definitive line. That's so if your game does carry over, but there's no reason you can't post your score within 15 minutes of game end. Smartphone,
it can't be an afterthought like a lot of times it is.
yeah,
So,
accurate scores are important. But since they're not doing power ratings, or there's no power rating involved in this,
right.
scores don't matter as much. Just who wins and who has won and lost. But that would clean the process up tremendously, and it would make it very easy for people to audit and run their fine tooth comb over it and say, well, wait a minute. We had a win here, or that team had a loss, and that does change our RPI enough to make a difference. But that's only going to impact bubble teams.
Now, Dale, let's have some fun here. Let's say that the NCHSAA says we're going to go back to the pod system from about 12, 15 years ago. You remember the pods where it basically was like you had the west, the far west, the Midwest, Mideast.
Yep, 4 pods.
Mm-hmm. If they did something like that, and a lot of coaches hate it because it's like it's an extra 2 conference games. We've played these teams already in conference. We're having to play the same teams again. If they did something like that, I don't know about you, but I would not like that. I don't like. No. I can understand breaking between East and West, but the pods was just a little bit too far for me.
No, because I saw teams play each other on a Friday on the last game of the season, and then those same 2 teams played each other the first round of playoffs.
Right.
It created stuff like that. What is Jeff saying? The pod system was in 2011 and 2012. That's right. I did not like that. The game I'm talking about was Ardrey-Kell South Mac.
Right.
So Ardrey-Kell South Mac played final game of season. Ardrey-Kell South Mac played first game of the playoffs. And people, I'm not as white as I look. I don't think.
I don't know. Well, hold on a second. I just got an email. Let's see. This is Casper the Ghost called. They wanted their skin back. Oh gosh, people are so mean about that.
What is it? These lights. I might can. Now it's getting a little darker. I might can turn it down some and not mess up my green screen.
Gotcha.
Should have done that sooner.
So, Dale, where are you going to be next weekend or this Friday?
I don't know. I last week I had I planned to attend a game, and then it's why is that not going away? I wonder. And then there I was in Chesterfield, South Carolina. Actually, I was down in Sherrill, South Carolina, and had to come back up through Chesterfield. So I don't know. It depends on where I am. If I have to go anywhere for work, I'm not sure what game I would want to go watch this week. I would kind of like to go to Kings Mountain Crest, to be honest with you. Um, that
Yeah,
of all the games, that's one of the games that probably interests me the most is Kings Mountain Crest.
I'd go to Concord Ale Brown if I was you. You can't get enough of the Battle of the Bells.
I hear you. That's a super duper both huge Bell rival game. It's a long they've been playing each other forever. But there's just something I don't know. I think that Crest and Kings Mountain is going to be a better game. That Brown Concord game could be a good game.
Right.
So what am I talking about? I don't. I think the Concord's maybe favored, and but I don't think they're a huge favorite.
You should go to New London and watch North Stanley host
North Stanley
Albemarle.
play.
They're hosting Albemarle.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Albemarle going to bring back TA?
They'll need to bring TA, his brothers and his family members and uncles, and
Yeah.
Albemarle has like about 330, 340 kids, maybe 350 kids total in the whole school. I mean, it's half the size of what it was when I was going to school. They're going to struggle with football right now. That's just it's just they don't have the numbers. They're not going to get the numbers out there anymore.
Right. Yeah, there was that time when they were just dominating, right?
Right.
Year after year, and in that same span, we had Thomasville and Lexington were doing well.
And Lexington's just horrible now. They lost to South Davison. And South Davison, if you lose to South Davison, you really need to watch, to take stock in life. If you're a 2A team, South Davison is probably one of the weakest 10 1A teams in the state. And Lexington lost to them. Lexington was a proud program at one time.
Yep. Wow, that's kind of where Albemarle's fallen, isn't it?
That's right. And Thomasville almost fell down that way. They were having 2-win, 3-win seasons, and luckily this year they've having a pretty good season. But
right,
it's tough out there.
The only team I think, and maybe that I think about when I think about those programs that has kind of stayed good throughout has been Salisbury. They've had some mediocre years, but I think maybe they haven't fallen on the same kind of hard times that those Lexington and Thomasville and Albemarle. And I don't know. I just kind of think about Salisbury in the same vein whenever I think about those.
I totally agree with you. Ashboro used to be one of those teams that was good, and they've struggled like 5, 6, 7 years now. Those teams in kind of the western, I'm gonna say kind of the western central Piedmont area.
Mm-hmm.
You got a lot of those old factory jobs are no longer there. You have different dynamics. You don't have the blue collar kids they're in that place now. A lot of the parents had to move out somewhere else, or their parents were not geared to be I guess the parents, if you're gonna live in one of those places now, you're gonna be more of a commuter place. Like if you live in Albemarle now, you're probably gonna be commuting somewhere, and the kids that you might have as a commuter parent, you may not have the same interest or the same mindset about football. You might be more into one of what I call the quote unquote country club sports.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different mindset. There used to be a lot of pride in these football programs. You don't see it that much. I mean, you go down to AL Brown, and yeah, they have a decent crowd, but a lot of times their fans are just not into it as much as they used to be. It's kind of shocking, to be honest with you.
Well, it's different. When the few games that I've been to, I've only been to maybe 5 AL Brown games in the last 10 years. Um, so I don't have a huge amount of experience to draw from there, but it seemed like the crowds were different type of crowd. Um, Now, granted, one of those games was on a Saturday, so it definitely was a different type of crowd. There was maybe a
Well,
handful of. I'm
you
sorry.
see some of these you see some of these AL Brown fans who going, "Bravo, bravo, well done, bravo." Oh, let me get some cheese here. Let me drink some wine here. They're
It's,
not rowdy like they used to be,
it's definitely a different class of people. Yeah,
and some of the old timers are not.
they're not
It's like
going.
they're not going. They don't care, and
Right.
it's just kind of troubling there. I hate seeing programs like Al Brown, seeing their fans kind of fall apart away, and they hurt guys like Newsom, who Newsom's a very good coach, and they don't support him, and that just
Yeah,
kind of it drives me crazy when I see that.
but it's the whole dynamics. The Kannapolis is changing, and
Right.
those older fans that you're talking about are old, and many of them have died off, and uh, they lose they lose interest. Uh, the newer the newer families that come in, unfortunately, you may have a lot of the same kind of situation we see in Charlotte, where the people are, yeah, if I may have a kid playing, but you don't have that extended family and friends that want to come to see that kid play.
Right.
Um, they would rather go do something else on a Friday night. So
Yeah.
that cuts in. Whereas before, 20, 30 years ago, everybody would want to go, even though if they didn't have a kid out there playing or they didn't have a nephew out there playing, they would still go because they had a friend's kid was out there playing. So,
In Northwest Cabarrus, I mean, they're basically in Kannapolis. I mean, which game would you rather go to, a Kannapolis game or AL Brown game, or would you rather go to Northwest Cabarrus right now? It's kind of 50 cent one side, two quarters on
mhm.
the other. It just it's just weird on that. Then you got some places like you go over to Charlotte Catholic. I mean, they got good fans there. They got really good fans.
Well, see,
Uh,
that's a situation like what I just mentioned. You got family,
yeah,
and the uncles that come watch the kid play, and then friends of the and oh, alumni, and so they have been able to maintain. They're kind of a little bit different. That's
right.
it's not just because they win a lot, but they're more family oriented, and um,
They said that all of them gone through the same dues. I mean, they have a lot in common when it comes to that
like
type of the school, and they got Randleman is another school that I think a lot of. They're fun to watch. They have great fans there. Those fans get rowdy. I mean, they are heard. That's a big home field advantage over Randleman. Dudley High School, same place. But then you go to other places where I hate to pick on Southern Durham because I like their coach a lot, but their fans they don't show up. If there's a away game, they're not going to show up. It can be 6 miles away; they're not going to show up to it. It's just it is what it is.
that's
Uh,
not coach's fault.
it's
that's
no,
that.
no, it's not. It's you got to market high school football, and a lot of these administrators they look at it with football with kind of disdain, not contempt necessarily. Some of them's contempt, but a lot of it's just kind of disdain. It's just like I'd rather not have to do that. It's just beneath me. Blah blah blah. It's good for
Mhm.
everybody that go to these games.
Exactly. Well, I got to do something about that lighting.
Well, Dale, I'm losing my voice, so I better
Yeah, it's a
call it
good
evening.
time to cut. There's 3 people online. I imagine one of them's Jeff. I'm not sure why I hid that. it showing anything? I'm sorry. But anyway, so he said, oops, what did he say? He says, you cover Crest Kings Mountain, I cover Forest View and Kramer. I'm tempted. I'm really tempted. I'm tempted to go watch West Charlotte. Who does West Charlotte play this week? I got to look at that. Wouldn't mind going to see them play again. Olympic Myers Park might be a good game. Don't be surprised if Olympic wins that game.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to see how Myers Park responds to their loss. All these teams are kind of on par with each other, so if they don't respond properly to that loss, they could have another loss. All right. Well, let's. I don't know who else was with us, but
it's been fun, Dale.
It has been. So I have to look at the analytics and see where people came from. Since we were on tonight, YouTube, 2 YouTube channels.
Oh well,
my YouTube channel and Carolina Varsity. We were on Facebook, Carolina Varsity. I think I may have put my Facebook in. I'm not sure. Twitter. I don't know if we're on 2 Twitter or just 1 Twitter. Carolina Varsity, and we're also on Twitch. So
gotcha.
I don't know who watches on Twitch. I've seen when I go to Twitch, I've seen that there's been a couple of viewers that watched from Twitch, but I don't expect I don't expect a lot to come from there. And Jim, when we do these things, you can, I don't know if you know, but you can also push them out on any medium you want to. So on your Twitter, your Facebook, there should have been an option for you to share the feed. I forget.
I think there is at the very beginning. But you know, every time you say Twitch, I always want to do this number here. Go.
Do this.
Yeah.
Twitch is a real popular streaming platform for gamers.
My daughter is on that. So.
Oh, is she? Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot of young people are on Twitch, but Twitch is used for other stuff. So we're not on TikTok because TikTok is short videos. They don't do live streaming, and Instagram doesn't do live streaming yet. But if they do live streaming, I'll put us on Instagram.
All right.
Okay.
All right, man. Thank you so much, bud.
All right. Have a good evening.
All right, guys. Everybody, Jim West, Dale Ross with Carolina Varsity. Have a good evening. Take care.